Good morning, I'm Captain Dave Owen. I'm the Chief of Staff here at INSURV, and I wanted to talk to you just briefly about the importance of zone inspections when it comes to INSURV materiel inspections. Here at INSURV, when we go aboard a ship, we can basically tell pretty quick after we've been on board for a few minutes how well your zone inspection is. Because when we walk around, a lot of the stuff that we find, if we don't find it documented, if it's a surprise to you, that's a good sign that the zone inspection program isn't there or isn't doing its job. The ships that do really well have a real good zone inspection program. And what makes a real good zone inspection program is from the leadership on down. Usually you find the XO and the CO are involved, the chief's mess is involved. And it's a great opportunity to train your junior officers and personnel. Get those khakis out there, have them show them around a space, show them what to look for. And I can't overemphasize, you don't want to be looking at your own spaces. You want chiefs, you want officers from other divisions looking at different division spaces so that they can find the stuff that you go by every day and just you miss it because you become tunnel vision to it. Again, I just want to emphasize, we take a look at, we don't grade specifically your self-assessment, but we do note it and we do document it and look at the discrepancies. And the big thing about a zone inspection is the follow-up. It's not done just because you finished walking around writing down all the deficiencies. You need to document those deficiencies, you need to follow up, you need to correct them, and the ones you can't get corrected need to be in that CSMP. We typically find the ships that do well have a strong zone inspection program. The ships that don't do so well, not so much. Have a great day.
I'm Commander Tony Ting. I'm covering the supply and habitability. I'm the Supply Officer Senior Inspector for INSURV. I've been with INSURV for almost 3 years now. I have inspected 70 ships, and of those 70 ships, 8 ships received a satisfactory grade or a grade of green for habitability. One common theme for those ships that received a green or satisfactory grade is that the commanding officers held the executive officer and the command master chiefs accountable and responsible for the preparation and inspection of the habitability spaces. Habitability affects everybody, yet habitability probably is one of the most neglected area on board the ship. We walk inside the stateroom and you're going to find unauthorized hazmats. You walk inside the enlisted berthing compartment, you're going to find exposed wirings. You walk inside the shower stall, you're going to have open-ended wires. And these are the locations where people uses it every single day. Inside berthing compartments, we even find some racks that are not properly installed. You touch it, it wobbles. And the bottom racks, when you pull it, it actually comes off. And you're going to have rust, and underneath it is full of trash. For cleaning gear lockers, you're going to find washers and dryers installed in it instead of the washers and dryers being in the authorized location. The dryers are supposed to have a dedicated exhaust that leads all the way to the weather decks. Without it, lint will accumulate in the space, and lint accumulation is a fire hazard. What we need to do for habitability is have an effective zone inspection. Have a critical eye when you walk inside the habitability space. Look for things that is not going to be safe for sailors. Almost all the items for habitability doesn't have any PMS on it. So zone inspection it has to be very effective. The people conducting the inspection, conducting the preparation for the inspection has to be really looking into every single detail that involves habitability. Now I want to talk about supply. We start on day one, inspecting the post office and dispersing, and head on to the sanitation inspection. Everybody thinks that when we do a sanitation inspection that it is a white glove inspection. Actually, it's not. We look for the process. Do they really know how to follow the basic sanitation procedures? It can be as simple as checking the temperature of a reach and reefer, and almost all the equipment in the galley are 440 volts. You don't want to combine 440 volt equipment, personnel, and exposed wirings. Yet, when we walk inside the galley, we normally find exposed wirings, open-ended wires for the ovens, griddles that are covered with grease underneath the wirings, and the grease traps that are actually touching exposed wirings underneath the griddles. These are items that with the PMS associated with it. PMS needs to be conducted properly, and it has to be effective. It has to be checked and to make sure that it is being, every single step on the PMS card are being followed. We then head on to the storerooms for supply. We start with the reefer and the chill box. The reefer and chill box requires to have deck gratings, yet some of the deck gratings are not secured in place. Some slides, some had gaps. So if you're carrying a box and you have gaps on the deck grating, it is a slip hazard and it is a trip hazard. Some are covered with ice up to 4 inches. And some of them, the reefers, the condensers are actually not working. It's food temp wise, the freezer is required to be 0 degrees or below, 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Yet we've seen some reefers where it's all the way up to 40 degrees. So we are not following the basic sanitation procedure, keeping the food in the proper temperature. We then head to the other supply storerooms where we often find personnel painting over rust. The deck is rusted, but instead of preparing it for painting, they basically just paint over rust, and it's not doing the storeroom any good. We need to store things properly. So instead of high seas and instead of in cases of rough seas, we know that the personnel on all those parts will not be falling into anybody. We then conclude the inspection by checking the hazmat storerooms and all the other items that involves supply, like laundry, the grease interceptor hood, and the laundry spaces. For the grease interceptor hood, or we call it the GIH, the most common hit are the Detroit switches. There's a PMS card associated with it, yet it's not being performed. Nobody's checking it. In case of fire, people will think that the Detroit switches and the fire toggle switches will actually work, but when you pull it, it's not going to stop anything. It's supposed to secure the ventilation and close the exhaust damper hoods. Yet some of the Detroit switches and the fail-safe switches that we check, it's not doing anything. So when we're doing PMS, we need to make sure that it is being conducted properly, that we follow every single step. And when we do the zone inspection for messing and berthing, especially for messing, inside the galley, inside the wardroom, inside the CPO mess, and in the storerooms, we need to make sure that we are checking for items that are not safe for sailors.
So I've been at INSURV for about a year. I've been on 20 or so inspections, and some of the common things I find are working inside of an engineering compartment or...
Yeah, that's fine. Take
All
your
right.
time. There's no rush here.
Okay. I've been in...
Right. Catch your breath. Give me about 3 seconds.
I've been at INSURV for about a year now, and I've been on around 20 inspections. So some of the common things I've seen are fuel leaks in engine rooms, specifically a fuel manifold or underneath a gas turbine module, pretty much all over a diesel engine. So what I look for when I'm inspecting a compartment for a fuel leak is I trace the fuel line from where it attaches to the engine all the way through the prime mover. And every fitting, I put my hand on it, I go underneath around it, I look at it with a mirror while the engine's operating, I look at the high pressure fuel side of the house and make sure that everything is intact. So there are no acceptable leaks for most fuel systems. So there's some small exceptions what's inside the gas turbine module, and those that are, most people that know about them are aware of those small exceptions. But generally, you could say that there should be no fuel leaks in an engineering space. The second thing I see a lot of, the shafting issues. So line shaft bearings, having excessive leakage, and shaft seals that have excessive leakage. So you don't have to know a lot about engineering to walk down into to look at a shaft seal. If it's dumping out water, there's an issue there. There is an acceptable leakage rate. Those are defined by PMS or the tech manual for the system. There should be engineers that are familiar with that on the ship, but you can really walk up to one and without knowing much about it and say, hey, that doesn't look right. And there's not a whole lot you can do there except for repair the seal or replace it. Third thing I see a lot of are loose fasteners or missing fasteners, and this happens a lot with new construction ships, but also with ships in service, where and that's important because it's an indication that there's work that's been done, and if I don't see the fasteners fully tight, that tells me that there's been some shortcuts taking place at somewhere along the repair. And on some ship classes, there's also issues where we have dissimilar metals, and the fasteners require isolation kits. And I've seen it where some personnel were not familiar with these isolation kits and installing regular fasteners or regular gaskets in places where there are dissimilar metals present. It's very important to put the right isolation kits in because it takes a lot of effort to inspect something like that afterwards and identify that discrepancy. So if someone installs the wrong hardware or the wrong isolation kits in a dissimilar metal, on dissimilar metals where it's required, you're going to get corrosion and a failure of the metal before you realize that there's a problem there. So I know how to look at that because I've seen it on multiple ship classes where these isolation kits are required, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for someone to come in after the fact that's not familiar with that's not been trained in that area to identify those discrepancies. So it's off the track for zone inspections, but I think it's important for anyone that's operating a newer ship where there's aluminum or has titanium or any other exotic metal on it. So these are some of the things I've seen, and you'll be a step ahead if you're aware of how to look for those and make sure they're taken care of. There's also a variety of resources available to know what to go look for on how to conduct an inspection. And I'd recommend looking at INSURV's website for our checklist and also ATG's specifically for damage control, the ASA checklists that come out of there. And that's what you're looking for and during an inspection. So thank you.
I've been at the Board of Inspection Survey over 3.5 years, and I've done close to 100 shipboard inspections. And some of the common things we see that are easy fixes, but every ship usually struggles with them. The biggest one is safety stanchions and ladder well safety. Safety stanchions should be intact at the top of ladder wells. All the chains should be in place, and the ladder well themselves, the front edge of the ladder tread should not be smooth, or if it's the non-skid type of ladder treads, they should not be broken or cracked or worn on the front edge. It's a slip hazard when you're going up or down ladders, and it's a common discrepancy we see in the fleet that's a pretty easy fix. If it's worn on one side, the easy fix is to just flip the ladder treads around to the good side so you get twice as much wear out of the ladder treads. That's a great tip right there. And then making sure the handrails are intact and they're bolted in securely. Another one is personal protective equipment. Eye protection, aprons, hearing protection, gloves, making sure it's all in good working condition. Very few ships we go to where we can't find at least a handful of the Mickey Mouse hearing protection that doesn't have the foam cushion on it, or it's intact, or it's not deteriorated. The last thing I would say would be the non-skid strips, not only at the top and the bottom of every ladder well, but on either side of every knee knocker on the ship. It seems like an easy thing to fix, but a lot of ships overlook that because they're trying to fix some of the bigger issues on the ship. But when that deck gets wet, sailors' shoes get a little slippery, get some grease on it, the non-skid strips are going to save some mishaps and save some injuries on your ship. Those are the biggest discrepancies we see when we're underway.
Hello shipmates, my name is Lieutenant Commander Ed Quinones and I'm at INSURV, and I'm here to talk to you today about zone inspections, which I'm sure is a very exciting topic for many. Now, you may have heard from a lot of people about zone inspections and the programmatics and who's going to do it and how they're going to do it and the PMS cards and all that. But I would like to submit to you something from my 26 years of experience, having done many zone inspections, both as a maintenance man, a brand new seaman on the deck plate, all the way to department head, or from my tours at ATG, and then now my follow-on tour from INSURV. What I find is that zone inspections aren't just about a good, effective zone inspection program. It's about everyone doing their part every day. So we can talk about the zone inspection process, and we can talk about how everyone is mustered and everyone runs out to their spaces. But I would submit to you is that when all of you, from the captain all the way down to the seaman recruit, fireman recruit, airman recruit, all the way up back to the captain, when you walk on board that ship, first thing in the morning, what are you seeing? What level of detail are you taking, and what part are you taking and making sure that ship is good to go? In other words, sharp, crisp, clean. Many people associate zone inspections with a ship being clean or getting the trash out or maybe the obvious things. But you got to dig a little bit further than that. It's not just about cleanliness or trash. We can all do that. But I would submit, who's looking at the space? What associated systems are part of that space? Who owns those spaces? And is the right person checking that space? So would I send a brand new sailor who's been on board for a month with a brand new Divo to go check out an auxiliary space? Probably not. Making sure you have the right mix of folks so they can learn from each other. You know, have the brand new Divo tail the captain or the XO or the CMC. Many things will be learned and things will be passed down from generation to generation. It's important. All of you walk through the ship every day, picking up, cleaning up, reporting, finding, and following up, because we all know one thing. In the Navy, we are great at making lists. But what happens to those lists once they're generated? And you don't have to wait for a zone inspection to get it done. I've heard many things about ships that are forward deployed in Japan, for instance, that are not able to get this, that, or the other. And so when INSURV comes on board, we see various levels of material readiness. But what I find is we actually had a ship that was forward deployed in Japan, probably do the best inspection that I have personally ever seen. And why is that? Because everybody was engaged from the top down. They had an effective zone inspection program, but more important, they had an effective team on board the ship, knowing what to see, knowing what to look for, knowing what right looks like. So an effective training program, walking the deck plates, divos, checking your spaces out every day, chiefs helping the divos learn, and everyone taking part in that process every day. And if you guys do that, you'll have a ship-shaped ship that's safe to sail, ready to sustain combat operations anywhere in the world at a notice call.
Walking through the hangar bay is one of my places that areas that I'm responsible for. As I'm walking through the hangar, you know, I'm looking to see the condition of the hangar, whether there's gear drift, you know, proximity suits or flow coats thrown over the deck. And I've seen that from time to time on ship. It's basically an indication of how the sailors are caring for their gear, which, you know, that's the gear that I'm going to inspect when I come aboard for the actual inspection. I would say the ships that have did well on zone inspection programs, you know, we've typically when we walk through the spaces, and of course on most surface ships, the small ones at least, aviation facilities is a collateral duty for most of the sailors. You know, deck does deck stuff, combat systems and engineers do their other stuff. But you know, if we see that the aviation spaces are well maintained, that's a good indication that the sailors are taking care of their gear and that they have some intrusive khaki leadership, you know, trust but verify, ensuring that the sailors are doing what they're supposed to do in order to maintain their gear and equipment to keep it up and operable in accordance with the AVCERT standard. Some of the things that I've seen, I've been doing this for approximately over 6 years, 2 tours. I've seen the lack of proper care of equipage. For instance, proximity suits laying on non-skid, and those are really expensive suits that if they get scuffed, the aluminized coating gets damaged, that you have to replace it. Float coats that are used for aviation being used also for deck or for painting the sides of the ship so they're soiled with paint and dirt, things of that sort. Additionally, in the spaces, down in the pump rooms, if they have a lot of fuel leaks, that's an indication that the leadership's not going down and checking behind the sailors, because a fuel leak in JP5 is considered an RBO. So it basically shuts them down on a small ship, air capable, where they only have one hose reel and one pump room. So a leak is a leak, and of course is an RBO. Well, I've spent 18.5 years on 5 ships, 4 carriers and 1 LHA, and I started from the bottom of E1. I've seen leadership, different types of leadership throughout my career. I can tell you, if you have a strong chief's mess, and that the chief's mess and the officers are working cohesively to ensure intrusive leadership of their sailors, trust but verify, that they're going to have a great zone inspection program on board that vessel.
Good.
Okay, hey, I'm Doug Moreland. I've been in the Navy approximately 28 years. Started off as a fire controlman and crossed over into the LDO world after achieving the rank of chief. This is my second time at INSURV. I spent 3 years here before, and then I went away over to Singapore for 2 years, and I've been back just a little bit over a year. What I like to tell the ships and the department heads and stuff normally on day one or when we go over prior to coming for an inspection is, you need to control what you can control. There's certain things you can't control. You can't stop a radar or a computer or a missile system from breaking. Those things happen. But what you can control is the cleanliness of your spaces. You can control securing for sea. You can control, how well your spaces are preserved. That's all within your hands. You don't need any outside entity to help you with that. And that's what I like to tell the ships that, because that is only what they can control. Let the gremlins and things that come along, but take care of what you can take care of. And if you inspect your spaces, much like when you inspect your people, the better you inspect, the more you can expect those spaces and or your people to do well. Yes, sir. In a lot of combat system spaces, I give you, especially like in magazines and armories and stuff such as that, is they get kind of overwhelmed, especially anybody that knows how force protection gear and all that kind of stuff comes to the ships. They repeatedly, annually, year after year after year, you get new and better and more equipment and or stuff, if you will, but none of the other goes away. So you end up seeing where these spacers are just, not for lack of trying, but are just overloaded with way too much stuff in them. They can't be secured for sea, and it gets to be just a hazard. And then it gets to where you can't even clean your spaces and stuff correctly because there's just too much stuff. You can't get to it. And then we routinely, not always, but you'll end up going into a magazine or something where you can tell where the young sailors kind of just went in and like painted over dirt and other things. Sometimes it happens. It's not the right thing, but it does happen. And again, if you're doing a good job on your ship of maintaining your own spaces and inspecting your own spaces, you can get around turn on that. Those things won't have to happen. I would say that it's thorough and that you do it early and often. I know there's programs out there that tells you have to, or a ship says, I will hit every department at least once a year or something in their spaces. Well, once a year by your CO or your XO going through the space is probably sufficient. But if you're the department head or division officer and or the chief, the deck plate leaders, you need to be in them spaces a lot more than that and inspecting their spaces a lot more than that. And then when that time does come for the commanding officer to come through your space, you'll be in good shape.